want to talk to you about bugs, exploits, features, Easter eggs. I don't know what you want to call it, but games often have them, and different designers and different communities handle them differently. I thought I'd take a look at three games that I've played quite extensively that have handled each of these situations in a different manner. I'd like to start with a caveat that while I'm focusing on three games, I'm not making any sort of claims that these games have extensive bugs more than other games. That's not the case. And in fact, you can think of big games like Diablo 3 when it first came out, how it had really problematic exploits that sort of messed up the economy for a long term. But we're not going to talk about that game. All right, so the first game I want to talk about is Spellweaver. Spellweaver is a game that just entered open beta. It's a fairly small company, so you would assume a game that just entered open beta would have quite a few bugs, but in fact, it doesn't. The game's done a very good job of rooting out any bugs it does find very rapidly. The designers seem to be quite talented, and the programmers are on top of everything. However, there was a bug that popped up recently, and it was pretty bad. It was a situation where one blocker could block an entire board of attackers, which is one guy, and the blocker wouldn't die. It would just bounce them one by one, boop, boop, boop. It was like he didn't attack. And so I was very interested to see what would be the reaction to this. If it took the designers a little while to handle the situation, would this become the meta? Would the community react to this, and half the people would start playing this exploit deck on the ladder, and then the other half would say, okay, I have to have extensive amounts of removal because they can't have even one guy, or I have to have a creature light deck, some way that this becomes the meta. But in fact, the exact opposite happened, and the community basically all decided we're not using this exploit. Anyone who did was called out as a cheater or some other nasty names. The designers were on top of it. They quickly sent a message to the two individuals that abused it and quickly rectified it, and then the community moved on. So I was really interested to see that this community for Spellweaver, when an exploit was found, the community was very adamant that it be fixed. It was not part of the meta, and instantly it was repaired. All right, so another example of this situation, which goes on the entire opposite side, is SolForge. So SolForge is another game produced by a fairly small company, and through their first two releases, there were no bugs at all. It was amazing. I used to talk to people all the time like, oh, yeah, that game that you're playing has bugs. You should try SolForge. It has no bugs. It's amazing. And then Set 3 came around, and they had a really cool mechanic where they had some cards that were more powerful than the curve, and so in order to balance them, they banished themselves from the game. This is even more important in SolForge, where cards actually get recycled back into your deck. So a self-banishing card was pretty important in a balancing factor. But what happened is, when they designed this card, I don't know if they forgot or if programmers forgot, but something happened, and when the card became banished, it wasn't banished from the game, it just went to the dead pile. And unfortunately, there are a number of cards that interact with the dead pile, and so this card that was self-banishing because it was too strong was able to be cycled over and over and over. And very quickly, the community was questioning on this and saying, what's going on? This is way too powerful. What are we going to do? And unfortunately, the SolForge designers were not able to step in right away and fix this bug, and instead they had the complete opposite reaction. Said, I'm really sorry, but this isn't going to fit into our cycle of development here. It's going to have to wait. This now is a feature, right? It was a bug, but it's now a feature. And so the whole metagame had to evolve around this one deck that was really strong and wasn't tested properly in testing because you don't test for bugs, right? This wasn't a deck. And suddenly it became really powerful. And in fact, the perception, at least, that it was so powerful caused SolForge to cancel a World Championship qualifier tournament and turn it into a whole different genre because it had to exclude certain cards that were a problem for this particular deck. And it became quite a debacle that lasted for quite some time until they were able to finally say, okay, this is no longer a feature, it's a bug. What's interesting, though, is how the community reacted, right? So the design team says now it's a feature, And the competitive players who are reading forums and things like this, they know, right? Everyone's like, that's the metagame. The metagame is this deck, react to it or perish, right? The problem is lesser skilled players or lesser involved players who aren't as up on what's happening have this happen to them. They come on the forums and they're like, what is happening? Some jerk exploited this apparent bug that I'd never seen before. It's not fair. It's not right. And it caused a number of problems. So it's been fixed, of course, and people have moved on from it. But it was one of those moments where the community had to accept the bug as being a part of the game and a feature of the game rather than a bug or exploit. All right, moving on to the third and last example. I'm currently playing a game called Outcast Odyssey, which is an app game. It's sort of a card game, not quite like Soulforge or Spellweaver, but there's cards involved. And this game is the most bewildering game I've ever seen for bugs. So every other community I've been a part of, when a bug pops up, everyone reports it, everyone clamors for it to be fixed. And we saw with Spellweaver, fixed immediately. Soulforge, I'm sorry, we don't have the tools to fix it, but we are aware of it. It will be fixed eventually. Do with it what you have to do. In Outcast Odyssey, we have a situation where there are tons of, I don't know what we want to call them, bugs. Maybe they're Easter eggs, maybe they're features, I don't know. But there's all kinds of interesting issues. And what's funny is like the top 100 players know most of these, right? They sort of hoard these secrets amongst each other and they whisper, hey, did you know you could do this? That's kind of crazy. And people and the lower guilds and the lower levels have no idea what's going on, right? So I was just in like a regular guild and, you know, I got a good deck together. I said, oh, what the heck? I'd like to see what this game has to offer. I moved up to one of the upper guilds and I couldn't believe what I was seeing when they're like, oh, okay, so what you can do is you can trick the game and put it in airplane mode and take advantage of it by doing this. And then you know how, you know, cards say they can only go in defensive decks. They can actually go in attack decks. You just didn't know that before. Oh, okay. There's so many of these crazy bugs that I was looking at this and I almost quit the game instantly because I was just like, this is just absurd. But what I realized is this is just the metagame, right? The metagame is who can find bugs and use them to their advantage. Seems all fine and good. Everyone seemed to be on the same page and totally fine with this. Until something happened. And so what happened is a couple weeks ago, a bug that had actually been around for a long time. It was reported on a Facebook post in April, so the designers had been informed about it, but it wasn't clamored to be fixed. A guild got a hold of this and decided, you know what? It seems like some people know about this, but not everyone. What if we work together? Instead of hoarding our secrets, what if we told everyone in the guild and everyone used this same bug or Easter egg or feature? By the way, the designers have come out and said, it was a bug, it wasn't a feature. Okay, the guild didn't know that. All right, so the guild all works together, uses this bug, and crushes everyone into oblivion. Right? People spend like 60 hours on a 3-day event and hundreds of dollars, and not just lose, just get obliterated. And immediately everyone's like, there's got to be something crazy going on. Because, yeah, you guys are good and all, but you shouldn't be able to obliterate us. And so, you know, there's all kinds of denouncing and calls that people are cheating, and all these problems have popped up. And, you know, the designers stepped in and said, like, well, I mean, if this bug is widespread, there's not a lot we can do about it. We will actually fix this one because it's really bad, so we'll take care of that. But no one was really punished, and so it caused this massive problem within the community, and people are really divided. And so it's very interesting because I see both sides of the reaction, right? So on the one side, you have people saying, listen, yes, we all exploit the bugs, but we all kind of know the same bugs, and we don't work together and only have one group that knows of a bug, and most of us just hoard the information, so it hasn't impacted the game to this degree, right? It's just something that's a part of the game. And so because of that, we feel like we were wronged, right? We put in all this time and money, and especially since this is pretty much a pay-to-win game, they paid to win, and people lost, right? And so they're really frustrated, and I totally get that. And then on the other side, though, you have this guild saying, listen, this is the game you play. The game you play is full of bugs. We all hoard information. We just happen to do it really, really well on this one occasion. and crush you all into oblivion. So I don't see how you can be mad at us for doing what everyone's been doing. And so the really interesting part of this is going to be to see, can this community heal, or is this game just over? Right? Because the game is small enough where if enough people just say, I'm not paying for this game anymore, this is ridiculous, this bug showed me, it opened my eyes to the extent of how problematic this situation can be, the game's just going to be dead. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. And it's been interesting for me to see in the different games I've played how people handle these bugs, exploits, features, Easter eggs. They seem to all be in the same basket, and they're labeled differently depending basically on what the devs say is the answer. It was a bug, now it's a feature. It was a bug, it's an exploit, right? Who knows? So we'll see how all three of these games react moving forward. It's interesting to see the different responses. So thanks for tuning in to a little take on bugs, and I'll see you next time on Tiny Graham's Games. All right. I don't know if anyone